This is the Aipas A2, and if it looks familiar, it's because it is. This bike is so very similar to one of the most popular electric bikes in the USA right now. This is very similar to the Electric XP. I'm sure you've heard of Electric. They are in stores, they sell online. They are one of the big bargain electric bikes that's out there with a pretty slamming price on some good equipment. But the Aipas undercuts them with very, very similar bike using the same frame and much of the same equipment until you get into the finer details. And we're going to go into that in this video today. I've been riding this bike around, the Aipas A2, for about 40 miles, and now you're going to hear my thoughts on it, my professional opinion. So let's go ahead and jump into that. In purpose, this is a bargain bike. I mean, there's no way around that. And sometimes the bargain bikes are a little uncomfortable to talk about because you go through this big list of all these compromises that are made, but you have to keep in mind that bomb in price. And of course, that's what they're going for. So aside from the goofy MSRP that they put on their website, realistically, this bike is at about 700 bucks. Right now on their website, that's what they have it listed for. It's possible that in the spring they might put it up a little bit if demand is really high, and in the winter maybe it'll get a little lower. I don't know, just keep an eye out for that. But before we get into the specs and the things that raised a question mark in my own mind, I did want to talk to you about how it rides, and it actually was pretty good. So the Aipas A2 is a stubby little folding electric bike. These things are almost ubiquitous in American campgrounds. They fold up really easily. You can stuff them in a trunk or in an RV, strap them down. They're relatively lightweight for what they can do, and the ride is pretty nice because the weight of the bicycle is low, the cargo is low, and it's pretty fun. The steering on these is not my favorite, with the really long stem that's coming up from the top or from the head tube that's all the way in the front. That's pretty normal for these kind of bikes. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room just because of the shape of the frame. And regarding the Aipas A2, they did pretty good. Again, pretty good for the price point. It's not my favorite type of bicycle to ride. It's very much a vehicle for convenience. So in one case, I actually took this bike on a pretty long ride, and I had to pedal it manually without the battery. I was able to see about 28 miles of range. I wasn't being particularly easy on the bike, and that is just a lot of mixed riding. So there was hills, there was pedal assist, there was throttle, there was no assistance whatsoever. So don't take that too seriously as a range test. And I have done some of those before. But in this case, the bike rode pretty good until it shut off. And when it shut off, it was not terribly comfortable. I put the seat up higher, I put the handlebars lower so I could get more of my leg power in there. And the thing that I noticed most was actually the seat. So the seat is very comfortable for sitting and throttle and with some pretty aggressive pedal assist. When you get onto it to ride and really get the mechanics of your body into motion, the wideness of the seat, of course, it rubs into the inner part of the thigh and it's not terribly comfortable. So I was doing intervals of pedaling on the seat and then pedaling off the seat to give myself a little bit of a break. But it was not unexpected, but it's just something that you may not expect if you don't bike a lot with these sort of bicycles, using it as a bicycle instead of as an electric machine. During my ride, the Commuter accessories were great. I was able to utilize the cargo rack, the fenders. The lights I didn't do too much because it was during the daytime, but I do really appreciate that this bike does have a set of brake lights. Brake light functionality is something that's often skimped on for some of the cheaper bikes, and in this case, I'm really glad to see it's there. Regarding the aesthetics of the Aipas A2, I've just got it in straight up black right here. But there are a couple of different colors on the website if you want things to be a little more cheerful. In terms of the rest of it, it's pretty much a functional tool, just a straight down tube, and coming into the rear triangle is pretty the same. Now, before I give you my professional opinion on who this bike is made for and kind of a general sales recommendation, whether you should get it or pass on it, I do want to say a little bit about whether or not Aipas is a scam. There have been some accusations made towards Aipas, and I found those, but what was really interesting is that Aipas felt compelled to put on their website, "No, we are not a scam." And to me, that itself is kind of a red flag. I don't know who's running their PR department, but I'm sure they would like that language changed, to say the least. Some accusations came towards Aipas in particular about their shipping. So it seems that there was an unsatisfied customer who was really excited about the shipping times that Aipas was advertising on their website. Now, this customer seemed to voice their opinion in a rather strong manner, and then on a different occasion, I don't know if it's the same person, Somebody else was complaining about the customer service, saying that the telephone wasn't answered and that they couldn't get a particular part. So those are the issues that I was able to find, or at least the direct accusations towards Aipas. And honestly, if that's all there is to it, then they're doing a pretty good job, because Aipas is a direct-to-consumer bicycle company. They ship the bike directly to the consumer without any store putting it together, doing the assembly, the checkup, etc. And that's the territory that it comes with. And this is just a part of being in our modern world. Yeah, when you buy something on the internet, it has to come through a shipping company. And when you buy something from a shipping company, sometimes there's problems, and shipping delays are just a fact of life now that everybody has to deal with, not just a store if you own a store. And so, yeah, shipping delays, they do happen. And Aipas probably got a little excited when they said that they were going to do 3-day shipping. I'm sure that's the case most of the time. They have a lot of satisfied customers, and that one that didn't work out, maybe they just they got the wrong person. But yeah, that's a regular thing. Aipas doesn't own a shipping company, so yeah, I mean, I'm quick to dismiss that as being evidence that this company is a scam. Now, the other thing is a little more meaty, because there were some complaints about whether Aipas could get parts to the end user and answering their phone for customer service. Now, that is totally under the control of Aipas. They can set up a telephone number and they can answer their phone, and they can staff it with somebody who knows what they're doing. And it appears that at least one customer was not satisfied with the efforts that they had put in. This is unfortunately common. I don't want to say that it is condoned, but it is common for drop shipping companies, particularly ones that are headquartered overseas. It's very common for them to have customer service that is not up to the standards that many of us Americans are accustomed to. And so I don't want to say that it is condoned or acceptable, but I do want to say that it is common. So is Aipas peculiar in that way? Absolutely not. Is it optimal? Absolutely not. They should answer their telephones. They should have parts availability on hand to service their American customers. And if they don't have at least that stuff available, then I would not say it's a scam. I would just maybe say it's a company that maybe doesn't value their customers, their long-term customers, perhaps. The amount of sales that this company is getting for a $700 electric bike, and there are a few people that are upset about shipping or service, then that's a pretty good ratio from what I say. I've worked for a direct-to-consumer electric bike company before. I've worked for a brick-and-mortar store before, and yeah, it's I think that in the customer service department and in that area, Aipas seems to be doing fine. I don't notice a whole lot of huge red flags compared to the scale of what they're doing. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that that $700 electric bikes, these things fly off the shelves. They sell pretty quickly. The bargain bin is where a lot of electric bike customers and consumers are going into. And it's a tough market when you got small margins, but Aipas has been able to make it work. Even through 2023, one of the more volatile years for electric bike sales, and right now, 2024, this is also a volatile year. So with this company sticking it through and still maintaining pretty good customer service, given the ratio of what they're doing, then I have a pretty good amount of confidence in Aipas for being a direct-to-consumer brand. Now, if you want that white glove experience, you have to go to a store. There's no way around it. There is no way around it. If you want that white glove experience for $700, then that's going to be an even taller order. I know that the general public and consumers can be quite fickle, and there is definitely a king's ransom for somebody out there who can offer that kind of a value at a store near you with that kind of overhead. You know, that is a riddle to be solved, and I'm excited for the future when that can happen. I've already seen electric bike prices drop dramatically in the decade or so that I've been in this industry, and I'm happy to see that go forward. This is a bargain bike. It's full of bargain compromises. We can talk about that now, but honestly, it is a pretty good deal for what you're getting. Very similar to the Electric XP. However, there is one big difference, and that is where the bike is coming from. not the actual manufacturing. The physical base manufacturing is done overseas in mainland China, and that should not be a surprise to anybody. That's true for this, and unless a meteorite hits me today, that's also the same for electric. I actually don't have electric XP to show you, but I'm very familiar with the bike. I've ridden one before. I've seen some of the manufacturing for the base parts that's been done in person. I just don't have one here, but I do have experience with it. But the Aipas I have been driving around for a little while, and yeah, it is pretty good for that $700 price range. I mean, equipment-wise, we have a 48-volt, 11-amp-hour battery, or 10.6, but the same size as the electric. The motor is stated at 750 watts for the Aipas A2 right here. And I want to tell you a little bit more about that, but I've got to mow over some other things real quick. The rest of the equipment is pretty similar for other folding bikes. You've got a folding frame with the hinge right in the middle of it, folding pedals, the handlebars collapse down. You do have a front suspension up here, which is nice to soak up just a little bit of the travel. I did notice that some of the grease was coming out of the stanchions on this. I really don't think that's supposed to be happening, but then again, that's what you get for the price. The brakes are a mechanical disc brake, which is not bad for this price point. If you're going real fast or going down a hill, then you may want something a little more meaty. But in this case, it's okay. The bike is lightweight. These are 20 by 3-inch tires, which is actually a different size from what you see on many folding cheap electric bikes. Most of the time, those are 20 by 4. In this case, it's 20 by 3. Personally, I prefer this because it makes the bike much lighter. You can collapse it down and put it into the back of a car or back of a truck. Much easier. I like it a lot. You wouldn't believe how much that extra inch on each tire makes a big difference. And it really does, because you need extra space for not only the tire, but also the frame, extra metal, extra weight, and so on and so forth. But I'm getting aside for myself. It has a lot of the Commuter accessories that we know and love. The fenders, which are plastic, the front light and the tail light is in the rack. The rear rack does have a bolt-on pattern, so it isn't welded on the way that it is on the electric XP. A few other quick things to mention are the monochrome display, which is pretty clear, not too bad. It's a little big for my taste. The remote switch is on the left side for increasing or decreasing pedal assist, and of course turning the whole thing off and on. This bike does have a feature which really bothers me, and that is the headlight and the horn function. So up on the handlebars on the left-hand side, there is the remote switch for using the electronic system, pedal assist and such. But to the immediate left of that is a big honking button system. One of them for turning the lights on and off, which is okay, kind of redundant because you also have that same functionality in the remote switch for pretty much every other electric bike. But the big problem is the horn. So this bike is equipped with an obnoxious horn, which is quite common in other world markets, but not in America. In America, when we hear that annoying horn, it seems a bit intrusive or perhaps offensive. And it's okay, I don't have to use it if I don't want to. I can just put a bell onto the handlebars myself. But the thing is, I've accidentally hit that horn when I don't want to. For example, when I'm leaning over the handlebars, perhaps to get a bag or to move the bike into a bike rack, and then suddenly, bang, little horn goes off. If it's outside, like on a bike rack, people think I'm honking at them and trying to get their attention. But if it's inside, like when I'm here in the office, then it's a lot louder because there's nowhere for the sound to escape, and it's quite annoying. So personally, I don't like that horn. I haven't gone into it, but I think I will just disconnect it next time I ride it because it's just not worth it. The build quality on the Aipas is, it's decent for $700. There are some compromises. The main hinge for the folding frame does have a little bit of noise coming from it. There is some creaking that's happening in that main joint. Perhaps a little bit of grease in there would make things a little better. The latching system itself, the actual lock mechanism to keep the frame, doesn't seem to have any issues. It's just the pivot of the folding mechanism that has it. So I'm not afraid to put grease into that. The battery fits inside the frame, which is really nice. It does add to some nice aesthetics to it. And also you can get a water bottle right here mounted on top of the bottom tube, which is nice. The rear rack can hold a decent amount of cargo, but nothing too serious. I don't think anyone really wanted to carry a whole lot of cargo on this. The mechanical gearing is about what you would expect, a 14 to 28 tooth with a tourney derailleur. No surprises there, it's about normal. But the big thing that I wanted to talk about was the motor, because I might need your help on this one. I'm a little bit confused. So I was looking at the Electric XP, and that one has a 1000 watt motor listed on their website. I don't have one, again, but I was looking around and it seems that at least one person checked the controller for the Electric XP, and the controller was rated at 20 amps. Now, at 48 volts, that gives you right around 1000 watts going through the motor. So a 1000 watt motor rated for what the battery and controller can put out at about 1000 watts. So yeah, perfect. But moving back to the Aipas, this bike on the website says that it has a 750 watt motor. Now, the battery pack is a very similar capacity. The battery pack for this is a 48 volt, 11 amp hour pack, very similar to the base version of the Electric XP. But I checked the inside of this bike, I pulled out the controller, and it says that it has 22 amps capability. And that would mean that this is putting out somewhere close to 1,200 watts if it's going towards that max. Now, if that's the case, then I would hope that this thing would be rated at 1,000 watts, but it's not really that big of a deal. If you do short little bursts with 1,000 watts on a 750 watt motor, you're going to be okay. It's not really a big deal. However, the weird thing is that I looked at the product number for this motor. It's printed on the back. I went to the website and it says that it's rated for 500 watts for this exact product number. So before we get too hasty, I don't want you thinking that I'm criticizing this bike because the motor is just not strong enough to handle what the battery and controller are putting out on the Aipas. That's not what I'm getting at. It's more of a question, is there more information that I need to know? Because I realize there are at least two very important caveats to this question. Number one is one that I mentioned a minute ago, that motor power is rated for continuous and also peak. So it's fine to have a motor that's rated at 750 watts and then do peak little bursts of 1,000 watts or even possibly more. Motors can handle that. That's fine. I mean, everybody in the industry knows that. And the other thing to remember is that the motor manufacturer's website for this specific motor, that was their English-facing website, and it is very, very normal for these Chinese companies to have an English-facing website that's not really current or up to snuff, or in some cases legible. Now, the reason for that is because they get very, very few of the general public who wants to know about buying a motor or spokes or a pedal or something like that. So there's not much of a reason for it. You don't need to wink at a woman in the dark. So in this case, it's probably more that this motor actually is rated for 750 watts and it's just a different model number that has not been updated on the motor manufacturer's website. But with that being said, if you do run this bike at the maximum 22 amps that the controller is putting out at 48 volts or up to 56 onto this motor that is rated at 750, we're going to just go ahead with that. If you do so, then that means that this bike might, or this motor in particular, might stop short, might overheat or something like that if you're really putting a lot of energy through it and you do not let up. So that's one difference that I would expect to see between the Electric XP and the Aipas A2. Now, those conditions are a lot harder to get than one may realize. I was actually riding a bike, totally different purpose. I was riding it up a hill, up to the mountains, and it probably took me like 5 miles or something like that before the bike overheated. That was a much heavier bike with a much more heavy-duty motor, but that's the kind of thing that you need to do. You need to literally climb up a paved mountain road to get some of these things to shut down. So with all of that stuff out of the way, now I'm ready to tell you who I would recommend this bike to and who I think should pass on the Aipas. Yeah, maybe that's not the best transition. So this bike is $700, so it's not hard for me to recommend it to someone who has that kind of discretionary income to throw around on just some fun little toy, because it is a fun toy. So if you are rich and live in the suburbs and you got spoiled kids and you want to put your teenagers on these things for $700, it'd be fun. It's cheap, it putzes around, and it'll get the job done. If you're looking for a commuting machine, if you are looking for something to get back and forth to work on a budget, hopefully your job is not, I'd say more than, in the winter, I'm trying to think of like worst case scenario. If it's in the winter, I'd probably say if your job is about 10 miles away, that's probably where I would put the limit on where I would recommend using this bike. It's cheap, a lot cheaper than a car, or in some cases a car payment, but it's really cheap and it'll do it. And the fenders, the lights, the rack, that's really going to come in handy. And the electric side is going to be real good so you don't arrive to work sweaty in the summer and you'll still stay pretty dry in the winter from the fenders. So It's not bad for that, 10 miles or less if you don't have too many hills. One thing that is yet to be seen that I really can't honestly review is the longevity of this particular bike, like of each bike that you get. I don't know how long it's going to last. If you ride it to work every single day, do 10 miles a day or 20 miles a day or something like that, then I don't know. I would just totally ballpark, maybe 2-4 years or something like that of regular use. Other electric bikes can last a lot longer, where they have better build quality, better components, and in particular when they have a battery pack that's not being expended all the way when you get to work and all the way when you get home. If that is your case and you're commuting that kind of distance, then one of these cheaper batteries is going to wear out its entire life cycle a little faster because you are killing it with every single trip back and forth. You'll notice, of course, because the capacity kind of goes down over the length of time, kind of like an iPhone, so it's not all that surprising. I would not recommend this bike for any kind of off-road application that is over perhaps a gravel road on an otherwise paved trail at a campground. This is really not meant for mountain biking. The tires do have some knobby tread on them, but yeah, that gravel area of the campground is about the limit of what I would recommend anyone do. I think the best user for the Aipas A2 would be something to get around your local area, such as going to a grocery store, maybe going to the library, things that are in a relatively small geographical area in a city or suburban environment. And yeah, I mean, for a trip like that, literally any electric bike or even an electric scooter could do pretty much all of that. But the big difference is you're paying $700 for this thing and you're not overspending on anything else. If you get some fancy pants, awesome dual battery cargo bike thing, yeah, it can do those 2-mile trips just fine, but so can this. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands if you can just get something that's super simple. I like it for its simplicity. I love it for the price point. Looking into the service, I think the Aipas is doing pretty good compared to the volume of what they're turning out. So honestly, I'm really impressed. You've been watching this long and I thank you so much for doing so. Let me know in the comments if you know of any other scammy behavior or accusations towards Aipas. I'll be curious to look into that. Also, you can check out this video where I did indeed ride a bike until it overheated on the mountain path. I'm Mikey for Blue Monkey Bicycles, and I will see you on later.